UFC 290 is this weekend, and I cannot wait to watch this card this upcoming weekend. This is a really nice card. We did have a little bit of a pullout between Jack Della Maddalena and Sean Brady, but I think they're going to replace Sean Brady with another opponent. So I think Jack Della Maddalena is still going to be on this card. So this card's still going to be pretty good. Again, cannot wait to get into it. We're going to go through the early prelims to the main card for this one, and we're going to start with Edgar Chairez versus Tatsuro Taira. And in this matchup, I'm going to go with Tatsuro Taira. Tatsuro Taira is a very, very good flyweight contender. In all honesty, I think he was supposed to fight, like a week or two ago. And it was against Clayton Rodriguez. Rodriguez had to pull out, but Tatsuro Taira, one of the top prospects in the flyweight division. Solid on the feet, really, really good on the ground. I did a little prospect spotlight on Tatsuro Taira. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I think he had like 3 fights in the UFC, and I dived through all of them and just go over how he is as a prospect in general. So going into this matchup, I think Edgar Chairez will be a little bit better on the feet. I think he's going to be a little bit more cleaner. Tatsuro Taira is still working on the stand-up, does have some pretty solid stand-up, uses some like high kicks and a little bit of range, but he is kind of open on the feet, which is a little bit of a problem at this point, but he's only 23 years old. But on the ground, he's a really, really big danger. Some of the submissions that he was able to get in his last couple of fights were actually insane. For Tatsuro Taira's last fight was a win over Jesus Aguilar, and Edgar Chairez lost to Jesus Aguilar in UWC by guillotine. And in their matchup with Tatsuro Taira and Jesus Aguilar, he was locked into a guillotine, was able to get out of it, and I think he got in like an arm bar that was like a triangle arm bar. It was very, very unique. A very good transition as well. He has really good transitions in general. I think he does get the submission in this matchup, maybe in the first or second round here. Elite grappler at this point. A prospect I'm keeping my eye on. I'm going to go Tatsuro Taira here by submission. Up the card, we have Saaiaman versus Terrance Mitchell. And for this one, in case you don't know who Terrance Mitchell is, if you're familiar with Tough or you've seen at least the clips going around, because Kai France did have a recent main event on a fight night, it was what happens when you when you bully on Tough and you get knocked out or whatever. I don't know exactly what it is. You'll probably know the clip, but it was him facing off with Kai France and like sticking his fists in his face, and then they show the matchup and he gets knocked out in 30 seconds. That's Terrance Mitchell. After that fight, he's been on Alaska Combat Entertainment, and if you look up their YouTube channel, the production value is very low. He's not fighting very good prospects in general, like 4-1, 4-2, 4-0, 3-3. These guys aren't big number records in general. I think that's pretty much what he's got, 11-6, and then the only real guy he's fought, he's lost to Kai France in 30 seconds. So for this one, I think Saaiaman's going to win this one. Very interesting how Saaiaman's going to look here, because in his last couple of matchups, I think he's going to look good. He's a really good fighter. He puts on a pace, kicks, stand up, ground game. Very good fighter, especially for 22 years old. I'm definitely keeping an eye on him. But for Saaiaman, he has this bad habit of fouling people. He fouled quite a bit in the Steven Kozlov fight. I think it was a grounded knee. And then for Mano Martinez, I think he hit like 2 or 3 groin shots. But in all honesty, I didn't think they were that bad, because what was really happening was like he was hitting the inner thigh and it would slide up. And a lot of these, he would hit the thigh and then Mano Martinez would go down and it would hit his groin. So I didn't think it was as bad as what they're making it out to be, but he's had a really bad run with the foul game here. So we'll see what happens with this one. I think Saaiaman definitely beats him, maybe by finish, TKO in like the second round. But we'll see if he ends up fouling. If he does foul, we got to start like thinking whether he's like a dirty fighter or something. But he's a very entertaining fighter. Basically, the guy that trains predominantly with Dricus du Plessis. They're the two guys, 2 South Africans that come in and are doing pretty decent right now. So up the card, we have Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menifield 2. In their last matchup, they ended up drawing with each other. But for this one, I think I chose Alonzo Menifield in the first one. But for this one could be very interesting. I am going to go with Alonzo Menifield again. I think he just has too much power, and I don't trust the stand-up game of Jimmy Crute. And because this is the second fight, I'm assuming Alonzo Menifield's going to definitely be hounding on that takedown defense. And I think he's going to be looking a lot better here. I think he's going to crack Jimmy Crute before he looks for a takedown, gets a messy takedown out of Jimmy Crute, and ends up just ground and pounding him. Maybe first round KO, second round KO. I think he just gets a KO in general in this first half of this fight. So I'm going to go with Alonzo Menifield by KO. Jimmy Crute showed off his good wrestling last last fight and ended up like tiring out Alonzo Menifield. Jimmy Crute ended up tiring out as well, and it just was a slugfest at that point. Ended up drawing, but it was a pretty fun fight. Alonzo Menifield 64% for Tapology here, 80% by KO. I agree with that one. I think he ends up getting a KO in this matchup, but again, pretty close fight. We'll see if Jimmy Crute's able to use some of his grappling, but I just think Alonzo Menifield is just going to be ready for it this time, and I think he's going to crack him before it gets worse in this matchup. Up the card, we have Vitor Petrino versus Marcin Prachnio. I almost screwed up that name, but this one's actually pretty interesting as well. I like Vitor Petrino. I picked him to beat Anton Turkalj. I think I beat him to beat Bellato on the Contender Series. I might be wrong there, but very interesting thing going on with him and Rodolfo Bellato. Rodolfo Bellato's only 2 losses are to Vitor Petrino. I think Vitor Petrino's first ever fight was a win over Rodolfo Bellato, so that was very unfortunate for him there. Kind of watched Rodolfo Bellato's last fight. It wasn't really fun in general, but he does have some quick finishes. But this is about Rodolfo Bellato. But in his last fight, he actually looked really good. He used some of the takedowns, and he was getting taken down pretty often against Rodolfo Bellato. Ended up KOing him, but it was hurting Anton Turkalj. Was able to take him down. Mark Smith didn't help in that matchup because Turkalj just kept grabbing the fence, so he couldn't really do much in that part. But for Marcin Prachnio, coming off a win over William Knight, I can't say his name fluently for some reason. Coming off a win over William Knight, which was really weird. He just leg kicked him at range. William Knight was just not fighting back, and I'm happy they cut him. But I think Vitor Petrino is going to be able to catch him here. I think he's going to be able to mix in some of the takedowns. Maybe he does the more of the Felipe Lins type style game plan here, where he pushes Prachnio against the fence, looks for a takedown, tries to close the distance off so he doesn't get leg kicked to death. Because honestly, I think Petrino is probably open to leg kicks, and that could be a pretty big problem against a guy like Prachnio. So I think Petrino is going to need to close off the range a little bit more here, try to counter when he does throw some kicks, maybe a body kick. He tries to counter with like a left hook or something, pushes him against the fence, tries to close off the distance, try to get a takedown, get a good position on the ground. If not, you got like a tighter area between the two, so he can't really stay at a distance and leg kick you and use his range that way. So go in. I guess he does have a reach advantage here, but I think the leg kicks are definitely going to be the thing for Marcin Prachnio in this matchup for him. So close off the distance and then just end up just holding him against, not holding him against the fence, but keeping him against the fence, limit the range, and then hit him with some good shots. And I think he might be able to get a KO in like the second round here, second or third round. Look for counters, close off range, and try to KO him. 87% here for Petrino, 13% for Prachnio, 75% by KO for Petrino here. I agree here. We'll have a 3-inch reach advantage as well. 25 years of age. It's looking good for him. Up the card, we have Kamuela Kirk versus Esteban Ribovics. I hope I said that name right. For some reason, I can't say it. But Kamuela Kirk in his last fight was a loss to Damon Jackson, which you already know. Damon Jackson is an alright fighter, I guess. An unranked area. He beat Hat Sabatini. And I don't know. I'm going to go with Esteban Ribovics. He actually looked pretty solid against Loic Radzhabov on the feet, and I don't see Kamuela Kirk getting Ribovics to the ground here. I think Ribovics just has this pressure. He has really fun fights. Doesn't really move his head too much, but has really interesting fights, pushes a pace more, and I think that'll be a little bit too much for Kamuela Kirk. And I think this might be like a late first round KO maybe. I think Ribovics is going to look really good in this matchup. He looked really good on short notice against Radzhabov in his last matchup. He's able to do good on the ground. Like he would get taken to the ground, but he's able to flip position and know what to do when he was on the ground, even though he was kind of playing the guard game with Radzhabov, who is a lot bigger than him. I thought he looked good on the feet. I think he looks good on the feet against Kamuela Kirk. He gets this one done by finish. Tapology says 85% for Ribovics, 73% by KO. I agree with him there. I think it's going to be like late first round or second round KOs here. I got Ribovics. Up the card, we have Shannon Ross versus Jesus Aguilar. And Jesus Aguilar made his debut on the Dana White Contender Series earlier, I guess in 2022, the 2022 Contender Series. Beat Erison Fajea by guillotine choke, which I believe he has like 4 now in like a row or something with his wins at least. So we had Erison Fajea, guillotine, decision, guillotine, guillotine, guillotine. So 4 of his last 5 wins are by guillotine. Shannon, and then ended up losing Tatsuro Taira by an armbar. Did have a guillotine on Tatsuro Taira before he's able to get out of it. Shannon Ross made his debut on the Contender Series against Vinicius Salvador. Ended up losing, took a lot of damage in that matchup, still got signed to the UFC. They're actually pumping him up before that fight, which is pretty interesting. He ended up losing, and then they signed him anyway. So I believe he is one of the Volkanovski guy. Like, they really wanted another Australian prospect. I'm not too sure what his affiliation with some of these guys are. I'm not even sure he trains with at City Kickboxing, so I don't even know. But I know they wanted another Australian prospect. They're hyping this dude up, and he ended up losing, and he still got signed. So I have no idea. Ended up losing to Clayton Rodriguez by KO, which is a good prospect, but Salvador is just not a good win in general to have at this point. For Aguilar, I believe he does have the shortest reach in the UFC, but I think he's going to be able to move forward, land some big shots on Shannon Ross, and then look for takedowns. I think he's going to end up submitting Shannon Ross in like the late first or second round here. Shannon Ross, I don't know how much durability necessarily has at 34 years of age, and I think Aguilar can get some takedowns here. So I'm going to go with Jesus Aguilar by submission, first or second round, maybe a guillotine in this one. Up the card, we have Yazmin Jauregui versus Denise Gomez. I think I'm going to go with Yazmin Jauregui here. She actually looked really good against her debut opponent, Yazmin Lucinda. They both looked really good. It was actually a really good fight for women's MMA, especially. She actually looks really technical. Lucinda actually looked good in that matchup as well. Estela Nunes, she beat her by KO, ground and pound. Denise Gomez made her debut against Ryan Dos Santos, won that one by decision on the Contender Series. Lost to Luma Lukbumi, which isn't a bad loss to have, and ended up KOing Bruno Brazil. And I thought Bruno Brazil was actually going to be something. She got that crazy KO in the Contender Series, but she couldn't really do anything against someone like Denise Gomez, who would just come forward and land big shots on her. Just no defense for Bruno Brazil. But Yazmin Jauregui, very technical fighter. I think she's going to be at a decent range against Denise Gomez, kind of like how she did against Yazmin Lucindo, very much like that, because Lucindo isn't the best technique, but she does have quite a bit of power. And the same thing kind of with Denise Gomez. I think she is a little bit better technique-wise, but I think Yazmin Jauregui is going to be better on the outside here. I think she's going to be a little bit more technical, and I think she wins this one by decision. Maybe we see like a 29-28 decision here, or maybe 30-27. I don't see her finishing Denise Gomez, so I see her winning this one by decision. 94% for Jauregui for Tapology. I agree with that one, of course. Let's move on. Up the card, we have Robbie Lawler versus Niko Price. I think this is Robbie Lawler's retirement fight. 41 years of age, long career in the game. Last fight was a loss to Brian Barberena by KO about a year ago. Niko Price, last fight was a loss to Philip Rowe 6 months ago. Won against Alex Oliveira about a year before that. I think he got injured after that fight and then took some time off and then ended up fighting Philip Rowe. But I think Niko Price is going to win this one. I think it's going to start out calm, and I think it's going to end up being a scrap, and I trust the durability of Niko Price for this one. Even though he did get KO'd about 6 months ago, I think he's just going to be more durable than the 41-year-old Robbie Lawler in this matchup, who's had a very long career, over, 45 fights, I think that is, if I'm doing my quick math correctly. Niko Price, 33 years old, used to having some of these scraps. I don't see him getting chinned. I think he beats Robbie Lawler maybe in like the second round. Maybe they turn it up a little bit more at the end of the first. Maybe Lawler gets in some good punches and Niko Price lands with some good shots towards the end and rocks him a little bit. But I think he ends up TKOing Robbie Lawler in the second round. I think this is going to be a fun scrap. I think, is this the prelim headliner? It is the prelim headliner. So I think this is going to be a fun scrap. It's going to get the crowd super hyped. And it's going to be it won't be a decent retirement for Robbie Lawler because I think he's going to get TKO'd. But I think this will be actually a really fun matchup. So 77% for Price here, 23% for Lawler. 64% are saying Price is going to KO him within that 77%. So I am going to go with Price here. Things are just going to be more durable within the scrap. So up the card to our first bout on the main card, we have Dan Hooker versus Jalen Turner. And I believe this matchup was supposed to be made before. Dan Hooker ended up pulling out, and Jalen Turner had to fight Mateus Gamrot, if I am correct. Yeah, on March 4th. It was a big thing on who was going to come in. Jalen Turner actually looked pretty decent against Mateus Gamrot. Ended up losing that fight by decision, split decision, but looked pretty good, especially on short notice against a pretty good wrestler in Mateus Gamrot. Dan Hooker, last fight 7 months ago was a win over Claudio Puelles, which he probably should win. Lost to Arnold Allen before then by KO at featherweight. Lost to Islam Makhachev by Kimura, beat Nasrat Haqparast, lost to Michael Chandler. So he's fought some really good opponents and beaten the opponents he's supposed to be beating. So I don't know Dan Hooker's necessarily fallen off like it may seem like on his record. He's just had a very bad run of luck with his losses. But beat Claudio Puelles, won by body. That matchup was weird anyways. I knew he's going to beat Claudio Puelles, but 33 years of age for him, 28 years of age for Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner, a really big dude for that division, it seems like. Like you see Hamzat, similar sized dudes. Maybe it's just the legs are a little bit thinner, so he doesn't weigh as much. But I still think he cuts quite a bit of weight here. Similar reach. I think Jalen Turner is just going to be faster. I believe I did do an early prediction or breakdown here. I think he's going to be a little faster. Wait, maybe I didn't. Maybe I did it with Matias Gamera, but I think he's going to be a little bit faster here. I think he's going to have the power to hurt Dan Hooker, and I think a second or third round TKO. Dan Hooker is getting a little bit older, 33 years of age, and has taken quite a bit of punishment. You saw that in the Arnold Allen fight. He was taking the shots, but he was still standing, but it was a standing TKO. Took a lot of damage there, and he cut weight for that one. And then obviously got TKO'd against Michael Chandler, got hit, sent to the ground, and then TKO'd there. I think Jalen Turner can land a good shot, maybe in the second or third round, end up finishing this matchup or winning this one. Maybe this one goes to a decision. You see Jalen Turner start to outpoint him a little bit more here, but I think Jalen Turner's just going to be better on the feet, faster, a little bit more powerful. I think he wins this one by... Yeah, I'm going to say TKO. It could go to a decision, but I'm going to say TKO. 81% for Turner, 17% by submission, 15% by decision, 62% by KO. So maybe the method of victory here is a little bit iffy, but I do think he wins. Up the card, we have Robert Whittaker versus Dricus du Plessis. And I am going to go with Whittaker here, but I don't know if it's a feeling or what, but I feel like Dricus du Plessis has a weird chance at winning this. It isn't a high chance, but I feel like just with his style, how he just rushes in there and throws like weird punches, he can catch Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker, I don't want to say his chin's bad, but he gets hurt by like the weirdest stuff. Even in their second Adesanya fight, I don't even think Adesanya landed cleanly, and Whittaker just went to the ground and got dropped. So he does have a little bit of a weirder chin. Dricus du Plessis, I believe, did fix his cardio, or at least it seems like he fixed his nose. So the assumption is that his cardio is going to be better. Whittaker, obviously, probably the number 2 guy, if not like equal to Adesanya in skill. Whittaker, I believe, when was the last time he finished an opponent? I guess I can kind of get into that a little bit later. But Whittaker, really good striker, really good on the ground as well. I think Dricus du Plessis is going to match him on the ground. If Robert Whittaker goes for a takedown, I would be a little bit, I don't want to say worried, but I think Dricus would match that a little bit more, and I don't think it's going to be as beneficial for Whittaker in this kind of a matchup. I think if he just stays on the feet, I don't want to say patient, but I think he just needs to wait for Dricus to come at him and kind of just counter shot him. Land some really good hooks on him, kind of like how he did, I don't want to say against Vitor, but even like a Gaslam, because Gaslam was pushing, Whittaker kind of stayed on the outside and landed some really good counter shots and ended up hurting Gaslam, especially very early on in that fight. But Whittaker, I think he just stays patient, doesn't really take too many risks, leave his chin out there, like trying to strike with Dricus du Plessis. Not that Dricus du Plessis is like some kind of mastermind on the feet, but he's just a very awkward fighter, and I do not trust Whittaker's chin for some reason. It's just a really weird chin. Like if he gets dropped, I think I trust him to be good on the feet, but I don't know. It is a weird fight. Robert Whittaker, again, I think if he just stays patient, looks for counter shots, I think he can win this one by decision. I don't know if he's going to KO Dricus. I really don't know. Maybe he lands like a head kick on him and then drops him and then ends up TKOing him, but I don't see Dricus going out. Whittaker has fought some really tough opponents, which is why he's been to a decision. His last opponent, Marvin Vettori, incredible chin. Israel Adesanya, close fight there. Kelvin Gastelum, incredible chin. Jared Cannonier had a really good chin. Or not had, but has a really good chin, even though he was getting hurt by Vettori early on in that fight. But he does have a good chin. Darren Till, he did get hurt in that matchup. Whittaker did, but that one ended up going to a decision. Got KO'd by Izzy. Yair Romero's decision. Head kicked. So yeah, he hasn't had a KO in a very long time. I think this one goes to a decision. I think Dricus probably loses on points. Dricus does start out slow in the first round, so maybe he takes a round, hurts Robert Whittaker at some point, but I think Whittaker wins this one, but just by staying patient, looking for counter shots, and pieces up Dricus at some point, just hurts him over time and tires out Dricus. I think he wins that way. So Robert Whittaker by decision in this one. Up the card, we have Bo Nickal versus Tresean Gore. Bo Nickal taking on his second UFC opponent. He had 2 Contender Series fights, one against Zach Borrego by submission, won that one by submission, and beat Donovan Beard by submission as well. Donovan Beard, a little bit of a better prospect than whatever that dude's name is, Zach Borrego, who was 3-0. Donovan Beard is 7-1 and actually like decent on the regional scene. He's 7-3. Well, I guess he's had a couple losses since then, so maybe not. But Bo Nickal in his first fight against Jamie Pickett couldn't really get the takedown until he like groin shotted him. So I was a little worried early on. Maybe he had the jitters or something. Couldn't really get that submission, and took a while. It just was a very awkward win in general. I think he just had the jitters. Tresean Gore, although hasn't really lived up to his potential, is still a very dangerous fighter. And he could end up KOing Bo Nickal in this matchup. But I don't think that will happen. He's lost to Cody Brundage. Brian Battle lost that one by decision. I don't know. I don't think Bo Nickal is just going to outpoint him on the feet to decision there. But he did lose to Cody Brundage by KO. Beat Josh Brown by almost trying to kill him by guillotine. Like, that was a very brutal guillotine choke. But I think Bo Nickal takes him down, controls him on the ground, maybe gets a TKO, but I think he ends up getting submission in the first round. Tresean Gore is solid. He has the tools, but I don't think he ends up winning this one. I think Bo Nickal is just going to be a little bit more comfortable this time, more comfortable than the last fight, and I think he does better here. But Tresean Gore could honestly defend the takedown. Just how it was looking against Jamie Pickett, he could defend the takedown and end up hurting Bo Nickal because Tresean Gore has really good power in his hands. People say, at least early on, that he looked kind of like Woodley because he wasn't throwing as much, but we'll see how this one goes. I think Bo Nickal wins by submission. 96% of Tapology agrees here. 75% within that say submission as well. So I'm going to go with Bo Nickal here by a late first round submission. Up the card, we have Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja 3. These guys have fought twice before. Pantoja beating him twice. I believe one of them was on the Ultimate Fighter season. Let's see if I can get it. Season 24, I believe. Beat him by rear naked choke in the second round. They fought again outside of that. Beat him again by decision. Looked really good in that fight, but that was 5 years ago. So now they fight 5 years later. Alexandre Pantoja, an insane grappler. Really good grappler on the ground. Brandon Moreno, really good on the feet. Pantoja is pretty solid on the feet. Ended up hurting Brandon Moreno quite a bit on the feet in their last fight. But Brandon Moreno has gotten significantly better since then. I am going to go with Pantoja. I think he wins within like the first 3 rounds. I'll probably say around the late second, maybe third round here. I'm going to go with Pantoja. I think he ends up finding takedowns or at least finding the back at least once here for Moreno. I think Moreno would really be making a big mistake looking for takedowns against Pantoja. I think Moreno, what he really needs to look for is kind of move around a little bit more, kind of circle, look for kicks, body kicks, especially the body, try and tire out Pantoja because he does kind of tire out a little bit more, especially if you fight at a higher pace, which Brandon Moreno should try to do here, fight at a higher pace, but you just got to avoid some of the takedowns. I'm worried that Pantoja is just going to push him against the fence. At least find a mistake that Moreno will eventually make in the fight. Pushes him against the fence, lands some shots against the fence. Maybe he gets the takedown and just takes it back of Moreno, and he's very dangerous there. So maybe Pantoja can get this one. Maybe Moreno has a decent chance here. He's very good on the feet. He's a good wrestler as well. But I think Pantoja is just a different level grappler. Just in those positions, I think he's just going to be a lot better. Brandon Moreno, again, avoid the takedowns. Land some body shots, try and tire out Pantoja, and you get a little bit of an easier fight there. Pantoja is probably not going to be able to get the takedowns. It's going to be a little bit rougher there if he does get a little bit more of a tired Pantoja, because he is a very quick moving fighter, especially in the grappling. So if you're able to slow that down there, you're going to be able to do a little bit better in those scenarios in general in this matchup. But I am going to go with Pantoja in the second or third round submission here. I think he just has Moreno's number at this point. We'll see what Moreno's going to be able to do in this matchup. See if he's going to be able to get his first title defense in the flyweight division. But this is a very close fight on predictions. 35% for Pantoja, 65% for Moreno. We'll see how this one goes. It's pretty, I don't want to say it's split because it is 35% for Pantoja and 65% for Moreno. But I think Pantoja gets this one done. Moreno only 29 right now, 33 years of age for Pantoja. So no real big age discrepancies. 2-inch reach for Moreno in this matchup, but I think Pantoja just gets this one done by submission. Up the card to our main event, we have Alexandre Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez. This is a really big fight. I'm really looking forward to it. Volkanovski has a really, really tough test against Yair Rodriguez. A lot of people will say this is probably, like, matchup style-wise, this is going to be a very hard matchup for Volkanovski. I think the range game from Yair Rodriguez is definitely going to be a little bit more interesting for a guy like Volkanovski. Especially Volkanovski moving down from the lightweight division is a different speed at featherweight. So we'll see how he kind of reacts and how he comes back into this fight and sees what he does after losing to Makhachev in that really good lightweight fight. It was a really close fight. A lot of people have it going either way for that decision. Beat Holloway really, really easily in that third one. Like, didn't show. I don't even know how much did Volkanovski even get hit in that matchup. He just schooled Holloway on the feet. Beat Korean Zombie. Beat Brian Ortega brutally outside. I think it was like, I don't even know what round it was. Was it like round 3 or something, where Ortega had 2 deep submissions? He brutalized the shit out of Ortega, beat the crap out of him. Max Holloway, the second fight was probably their closest fight. A lot of people think Holloway won that. I thought Volkanovski won all 3. So Yair Rodriguez, off his last matchup, won the interim title against Josh Emmett by triangle choke. Again, use that distance, able to use a lot, especially the body kicks. Like, he's just so fast on the feet with his kicks. It is going to be a problem for Volkanovski, especially early on. Beat Ryan Ortega by KO. It was a shoulder injury, so you can't really take too much out of it, which is why I was a little bit annoyed by that interim title fight. But he did lose to Max Holloway, made it a little bit close there, and then beat Jeremy Stephens by decision 4 years ago. So not crazy active as a few years ago, but a year and 7 months ago lost to Holloway. 7 months later, beat Ortega, and then recently active by 6 months. So early on in this fight, I think Yair Rodriguez is going to be able to hurt Alexandre Volkanovski. I think it's just going to be a little bit of an adjustment period for Volkanovski. I think he knows the dangers of Yair Rodriguez, but I think early on, Yair Rodriguez is going to hurt Volkanovski from that range. I think he's just going to go out there and just try and do what he did to Emmett, try and make that pace a little bit faster for Volkanovski, so he's a little bit off, especially coming from lightweight. I think he's going to hurt Volkanovski early on. I think he's going to have a little bit of an adrenaline dump. He's going to do too much, and I think he's going to tire out as the fight goes on. I think Volkanovski wins maybe 4 or 3 rounds down the stretch by decision. Volkanovski, I think, eventually does come back to normal. You kind of saw that with his last, or not with his last, but even the Max Holloway fight, he got dropped a couple times and was able to regroup. Even in the Makhachev fight, he was dropped and was able to come back and keep going. So I think Volkanovski has a very rough first round. Maybe second round's a little bit close too, but I think he eventually mixes in the takedowns, does really well on the ground. I think Yair Rodriguez starts to gas a little bit more. Weirdly enough, Volkanovski has really weird reach, especially for his size, 71.5 inches of reach, 71 inches of reach for Yair Rodriguez. So Volkanovski will have a half-inch reach advantage in this matchup. But I think he's going to be able to land some shots as the fight goes on. I think Yair Rodriguez, with the cardio, with the adrenaline dump after hurting Volkanovski in the early first round, I think Volkanovski is going to be able to land some punches because Yair Rodriguez's defense isn't the best. I think he just leaves his head out there way too much, especially. He doesn't keep a high guard at all. Volkanovski does. That's why I think he's going to be a little bit better as the fight goes on. The cardio is going to be a little bit better. And you kind of noticed that in the Emmett fight for Yair Rodriguez. He got clipped with a really good shot from Emmett at one point in that fight, and I was like, oh, because I picked Yair. I was like, oh, well, let's not have Emmett win this one. But Yair ended up finishing Emmett. We'll see how this one goes. I am a little bit worried that Volkanovski will lose this one, but I do think he wins this one by decision. I think he just gets better as the fight goes on. Yair Rodriguez will have a really good first round, maybe a good second round, maybe he takes the second round, but I think Volkanovski wins the last 3 and wins this one by decision, maybe even the last 4, uses the takedowns. Yair Rodriguez's defense isn't going to be as good, and I think Volkanovski is going to be able to get the speed down as the fight goes on. Tapology has Volkanovski 88% here, 12% for Rodriguez. The odds on this matchup is really making me a little uncomfortable here, which Volkanovski is arguably probably the most skilled fighter in the UFC at this point. The most balanced for sure, the most skilled. I think you can definitely say that at this point, but I don't know, those odds really make me nervous, especially for the style matchup for Volkanovski and Rodriguez. But I think Volkanovski gets this one done. I doubted him against Makhachev. I won't down him here. I think he gets this one done by decision. Maybe he gets a finish after Rodriguez kind of tires out and he's just able to get some ground and pound on him when he does take him down. But I am going to go with Volkanovski here by decision. Let me know what you guys think about this main event, and I'll see you guys next time.